Good afternoon. Welcome to day 4 of the Toronto International Film Festival. My name is Tom Powers. I'm the documentary programmer of the festival. To begin, we would like to acknowledge this night's event is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community. This film is eligible for the Grolsch People's Choice Award and the Grolsch People's Choice Documentary Award. You can vote for your favorite films online at tiff.net/vote. I want to thank the William Morris Endeavor Entertainment Agency for providing us with this film. You are the first audience in North America to see American Dharma. Have you heard anything about this film yet? Listen, I want to be clear here. The subject of this film, Steve Bannon, is an enemy of everything that I think of this film festival standing for. The very word in our title, international. I think of Steve Bannon as an enemy to the spirits of internationalism, of ideas and people crossing borders. And if you look at the full documentary lineup this year, you're going to see that it's largely devoted to people who are champions of values that are attacked on Breitbart News. You'll find a nuanced look at Muslims in the film When Arabs Danced. You'll see a celebration of black culture in Quincy. And you'll see the cause of gender equality in This Changes Everything. But I also think it's important to look at our enemies, to study our enemies, try to understand our enemies. And that's why we make room for films like American Dharma, or later tonight, Divide and Conquer, the story of Roger Ailes. It's not an easy job to take on a subject like this. I know from my own days as a documentary filmmaker, when I attend events like the NRA convention, it can take a lot out of you to be in that environment. But Errol Morris has a long track record of taking on these kinds of subjects in films like Mr. Death and Fog of War and The Unknown Known. And I am very proud to present this film tonight. Please welcome Errol Morris.
Well, I'd like to thank Tom and Dorota for inviting this film to TIFF. I can't quite say that this is a film that's not going to generate some level of controversy. It already has. But it's a film I'm glad I made. I'm fascinated by evil characters, fascinated by what makes an evil character, the nature of evil itself. And this film is not unique in what I've done. It's a film preceded by many on a similar theme. This one was particularly challenging, if only because it is in part history, albeit recent history, but it's also part of what is going on around us right now as we speak. And for that reason, I can't speak for your reactions to the film, but I can speak for my own. It's a horror movie. It's ultimately a movie that terrifies me. And the question is really ultimately, how do you respond to things like this? Do you follow the ostrich example and stick your head in a hole in the ground, hoping that not observing danger will protect you from it? Or do you try to scrutinize it and understand it? Anyway, thank you all for being here. I'll be back, I hope, at the very end of the film and answer questions that you might have. And I'm really excited to have it here. Thanks once again for doing this.
Thank you, Errol. Please welcome back Errol Morris.
Thanks for staying.
Errol, you talked in the introduction about your fascination with evil, and I wonder how you see this film fitting in with your fascination with evil.
Boy. I'm not sure I know what evil is, although I keep trying to figure it out. I don't really believe in evil people. I certainly believe in evil acts because they're all around us constantly. The idea of evil incarnate troubles me. I don't know if you've seen any of my other films, but I am endlessly fascinated by self-deception, cluelessness. And this is certainly a story about a man who lives in a strange fantasy world that's been stitched together from diverse elements. Early Christianity, John Ford movies, various kinds of nationalist ideologies, and so on and so forth. A somewhat incoherent mess, in my opinion. And it's not clear to me, if you surround yourself with this shell of belief, in some ways we're all like that, some more than others. Perhaps you just don't see the world anymore, or you see the world in such a way that nothing really defeats your core beliefs, no matter how crazy or ridiculous they might be. I say very early on in this movie that what he talks about, what he believes, is incoherent. It doesn't really make sense. And having made this film, I have no reason to change that claim. He seems to me at his most ridiculous, most absurd, when he couples his claims, his populist claims, national populist claims, whatever that might be, with his defense of the Trump administration. To call Trump a populist does, in my view, violence to the whole idea of what populism might be. If this is a man of the people, I don't quite see it. Forgive me. I see something much closer to the exact opposite. But I've been prattling on, and you deserve to ask me some questions.
Okay, let's do that. Lots of hands in the purple here.
Was there any reluctance? Was it difficult to get him to sit down, and did he try to control the editing afterwards?
He had no control over the editing. I wouldn't have made this movie. I wouldn't have made the movie if he had any control whatsoever over the editing. I had final cut. I did say to him I would show him various cuts as we went along. He could complain about them, but he could in no way force me to change anything.
Gentleman right here. With him.
Does that answer the question?
Was he reluctant to sit down with you, or was he immediately on board?
This is a man who likes to talk.
A gentleman here.
Yeah. Bannon and European fascist movement to any greater extent. I believe he's read the work of Julius Evola. He seems to be very closely linked to fascist ideologues in Europe.
The question is, did I question Steve Bannon about his love of various fascist ideologies, in particular Julius Evola? I did, and it's something that still interests me. But we decided to focus on other things in the film. It's a perfectly, well, I don't need to tell you this, but it is a more than legitimate question. You make these movies. Movies are like sausage casings, to put it politely. You can cram just so much into them. There's many, many, many things worth exploring with regard to Stephen Bannon and his diverse beliefs and ideologies, that being one of them. And I've been asked to write a book. Maybe I will do it, I'm not so sure. I kind of like making movies at the moment, but I would like to write more about it.
Okay,
his love of Milton fascinates me.
This is what it's like trying to interview Errol.
I mean, how many people do you get to interview who not only have read Paradise Lost, but who embrace, I think this is the correct way of describing it, embrace this comparison of him with Lucifer? Who does that? Yeah, Lucifer, my favorite character. I mean, here's a question for the audience, because it's been on my mind really during the making of the movie. Very early on, you know, he starts talking about how Greek tragedy is hopeful, which, of course, to me is insane. Oedipus is hopeful. Well, according to Steve Bannon, you learn something. What does Oedipus learn? He learns don't sleep with your mother, don't kill your father, and really think twice before you pluck out your eyes, because you can't stand what you have in fact done. I would submit there is nothing hopeful about Greek tragedy. And the whole Dharma idea, the fulfillment of Dharma, what does that not justify? You can justify anything. It's all fulfillment of Dharma, if you like. I don't know how many people here have seen Henry King's 12 O'Clock High. I should ask for hands here. Anybody? Lots of people. I hadn't seen it when I started this project. I watched it before my first meeting with Steve Bannon and kind of fell in love with it. Is this a bad thing to admit to? Possibly. So you have this character, this Gregory Peck character. It's Gregory Peck's. If you haven't seen it, go out and see it. It's Gregory Peck's best performance, better than To Kill a Mockingbird. I think it's an amazing movie. But I kept asking myself while watching it, while Gregory Peck is invoking his soldiers to go on these missions where they are likely to die, and to accept that, accept the fact that you're going to die. In fact, it's one of the great lines, consider yourself already dead. I'm watching this and I keep wondering, okay, 1949, looking back on the war and the Allied victory over the Nazis, But what if this was a story about a Nazi rather than an American general still fulfilling his dharma, duty, destiny? Where does morality come into any of this? Okay, you're a honey badger. Terrific. You know, honey badgers, what's the technical term? Honey badger don't give a shit. Doesn't care. You got to do what you got to do. Is that the program? You got to do what you got to do in service of what? Burning down the world? I like to think I've made a number of Looney Tunes movies. And this is one of them.
All right, let's get another question. Right here, this woman. I'll repeat it.
So I just, it was a very interesting project. Thank you for your work on it. I do wonder, one thing that strikes me as different from this film as other films I've seen at the festival in this time is that it didn't seem like there were really any voices of women or perspectives of women. And I'm wondering if that was a choice that you thought about and made a decision, or if that was something that happened because of the...
So the question is, there isn't a voice of woman of a woman in this film. Is that a conscious choice? Or?
Well, of course it's a conscious choice. Have you seen any of my other films?
I have.
Ah.
I think we're in sort of a different moment in time is what I'm just wondering.
Do I think that women should be included in films? Of course I do. I was brought up by a very strong woman. My father died when I was 2 years old. I owe my very existence to an extraordinary mother. But I've made these movies, for better or for worse, with one person. There's no other interviews, men or women. There's only one interview in the movie. There's only one interview in my movie about Donald Rumsfeld. There's only one person. There's only one person in my movie about Robert S. McNamara. They're the central figure. And there's only one. And did I choose to do that? I did. Because it's an exploration of how they see the world and how they think.
Okay, let's get another question right here. Was it your choice to relate his life to movies, or how did that idea come up?
This was my choice to include movies, but the selection of movies and his obsession with movies comes from Steve Bannon, not from me. I knew going into this whole project, I had asked for his list of his favorite movies, list of his favorite books, and so on and so forth. These are movies that he picked. And it's strange. For me, we sat in that 12 o'clock high set, that Quonset hut set that we built on a stage outside of Boston. And we watched the movies, the clips, together. We had a screen, I turn around, I watch the screen, he watches the screen. And all of these things emerged that were just unexpected. We're watching, for example, Chimes at Midnight, the scene where Sir John Falstaff approaches the newly crowned Henry V at the end of Henry IV, Part 2. And Bannon interprets the scene completely differently from me. It's interesting. What is that scene? Well, I guess everything is that scene. It's the fulfillment of dharma, destiny, duty. Sir John Falstaff is delighted. Oh, yeah. Henry V is not being altogether nice to him, you know. You know, if you approach closer than 10 Mile, I'll kill you. I say to Bannon, this is a horrible rejection, a humiliation. And I think it occurs to both of us more or less at the same time, not planned in advance, that this is about his departure from the Trump administration, his firing by Donald Trump. So strange. He sees it as a triumph, fulfillment of Dharma. After all, it's all. I'd like to say that I'm here today showing you the film as a fulfillment of Dharma. But all of those other emotions, guilt, betrayal, humiliation, and on and on and on and on, just vanish in this kind of strange view of history. I find it really scary.
Errol, we have to wrap up shortly, but I want to ask a last question about the streak of anti-Semitism that runs through Breitbart as we embark on Rosh Hashanah. You hear the clip of, from Charlottesville, "Jews will not replace us." What do you make of that strain of anti-Semitism that runs through Breitbart?
Well, you're talking to a Jew. Happy New Year.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. I despise it. Here's a question I keep thinking about. Because Bannon will claim, I'm not a racist, I'm not an anti-Semite, blah, 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 blah. Well, here's the question that haunts me. Because I've interviewed a lot of anti-Semites over the years. When does pandering to racists become racism? There's a line that he said in France, which all of us should know, is experiencing a recrudescence of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic feeling. Bannon is standing next to Marine Le Pen, talking about, they call you a nativist, they call you a xenophobe, they call you a racist, wear it as a badge of honor. Okay, but then he did something which I found totally unacceptable. He started referring to Macron as that little Rothschild banker. And we all know, again, or should know, that is anti-Semitic. I was sitting down with a friend of mine. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Noah Feldman, a professor at Harvard Law School, and I'm talking about this line. Is that a dog whistle? And Noah Feldman looks at me and says, that's not a dog whistle. That's a whistle whistle. So what do I think about it? I find it repellent, disgusting, and unacceptable.
Errol, I thank you for being here with your film. I thank you for coming. You're the first audience in North America to see American Dharma. Hope you enjoyed the festival.
You seem to have survived.
Errol Morris.